And we're starting off this week's broadcast from keeping up with your personal finances to staying informed on any new regulations. So many things go into making the best decisions for a farming operation. Market Journal's Bill Dodd recently spoke with Tina Barrett, director of Nebraska Farm Business, to get her perspective on what farmers and ranchers should be paying attention to now in order to make the most informed decisions possible.
Over the last 15 years, the farm economy has seen some extreme ups and downs. Sometimes it can be hard to keep up with the ever-evolving changes to agriculture. When it comes to setting your operation up for sustainability, however, one of the best things you can do is be prepared and flexible.
Yeah, I just think it's really important that you're prepared for just about anything as you're sitting out on the farm, because we don't know if prices are going to jump, up in rapid fashion or if they're going to go down the limit. Being prepared to take advantage of those opportunities is going to be really important. And we're seeing that both on the commodity side as well as the input side. And just having that ability to know what your numbers are so that you can make decisions as those ups and downs come at the farm, and you're prepared to work with those.
When it comes to being prepared, having a good grasp on net farm income trends over the last decade could be a beneficial aspect to tie into your decision-making process.
Well, we saw that huge run up in the late 2007, 2010, really peaking in 2012 with the drought, and then it just kind of fell out. And, we really saw a lot of farms struggle, especially with liquidity through that time. The decisions that were made in those late years on that run up to defer taxes and, buy more equipment and really get out of some of those short-term problems caused some long-term issues through that downtime when we were in that period where prices weren't as good. We were still trying to make payments on those purchases that we've already written off. So we saw a lot of struggling, and that seemed to be across the board, whether we were talking about crops, livestock, or anything. But those operations that were not prepared during those times and didn't make any changes really were struggling, and probably would have saw a lot more bankruptcies if 2020 hadn't ended up being the way it was. So.
Arguably, one of the biggest lessons learned in the 1980s was to protect net worth and avoid overinflation with increasing land values. However, Tina tells me one of the biggest lessons over the last decade has been for producers to protect liquidity.
And that maybe is something we didn't do very well. We saw liquidity just go through the roof when prices were high and profitability was up there. But that fell pretty quickly. Sometimes we'll talk about our liquidity kind of in relationship to like our heart rate or our breathing rates. Those things that change very quickly over, and going to fluctuate. Where that net worth or that solvency number is kind of more like a cholesterol level, and it takes longer to move. So, it's not something that we want to panic about having your liquidity go down, but we need to pay attention to it and make sure that we're protecting that when things are good, like we're seeing right now, and not doing things that are going to harm that liquidity down the road, especially if prices come back down.
When it comes to quality decision-making, it's always good to have a list of important items and goals to accomplish. These are the top priorities that Tina tells me farmers and ranchers should be paying particularly close attention to.
So, if you wanted to put together a top 5 list of things to do, the first one's, getting your financials in order. And that doesn't mean waiting until the night before tax planning, but really keeping those up to date, keeping your balance sheet up to date, working on a cash flow that makes sense that you can use. And that you can translate into step number 2, which is knowing your cost of production. Because when you know what your costs are, you can be prepared to make those decisions, whether that's marketing the crop or locking in input prices. And it's really important to understand that, as many farms as we work with, that no two people's cost of production are the same. So this isn't information that you can get from the coffee shop or from the newsletter or even Twitter, which seems to be the famous place to get news these days. But it's going to be different for every farm. And that seems crazy because everybody's doing the same thing, but it's different. So know yours. And then protect your liquidity. That's number 3, is just make sure you're watching that and making sure that the decisions that you make today and then throughout this year are decisions that are not going to impact that liquidity for the next 5 to 7 years, like making purchases and borrowing the money. Those are things that will affect your liquidity in the long term. So make sure that that's the right choice for your farm. And then pay those taxes. Again, it's a hard thing to think about, but really will help your operation get in a more financially sound place. And again, we don't want to pay more than we have to, but this might be a good opportunity to pay tax at a pretty low rate before any changes might come through. And then number 5, again, was just stay informed. Right. And again, I think if the last 12 months have taught us anything, is you better be prepared for anything that might come in a very short time frame. We've had a lot of programs that have had to been applied for and done in a really quick format. So be prepared for whatever might come and be ready for that.
With an industry that will inevitably have its ups and downs, outcomes will usually boil down to being prepared and flexible in order to make the most informed and profitable decisions for your operation. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.